L1 sentence structure is intended to help us use a better variety of sentence types within our writing to make our writing more interesting. The target itself asks that you can correctly use compound, complex sentences, including appositives. But I would truly add in there, you should be using simple sentences too. If all of your writing is compound and complex, you're going to be pretty wordy, and that will be hard for your reader to follow. So really consider this using a mix of all three to good effect. At the 3 level, your usage is seamless and it enhances meaning. In other words, you're using your simple sentences to really make one single important point clear. You're using your compound and your complex sentences, which will be longer, to add in detail where detail is most needed. But use it consciously. At the 2 level, you make some errors or you're a little inconsistent. So you're definitely using simple, compound, and complex sentences, but maybe your commas aren't totally correct in all of your sentences. Or maybe you've got one paragraph that leans more towards simple rather than having a mix. At the 1 level, you attempt the strategy, but you're incorrect. So while you might have simple, compound, and complex within your paper, I would see that the punctuation is not correct and that you tend to have a lot of simple together, a lot of compound together, or a lot of complex together. So we should probably make sure we fully understand what simple, compound, and complex sentence structures are if I'm going to ask you to use a mix of those 3 different types. Simple sentences are just your basic sentence. They have a subject, a single subject, and a verb, and that will express a single complete thought. As an example, I like Swiss cheese. I am the subject, one subject here. What am I doing? I like, that's my verb, and I've added in an object here. That's totally okay, but it's just one complete thought, that I like Swiss cheese. I could also say I ran, which would just be that basic subject and verb. That'd be a complete sentence, and that's totally fine. Now, you can have more than one object in a simple sentence. So in the second example, we still have one subject, I, we have one verb, like, but then we have a list of objects. Still a simple sentence because there's only one subject. In this final example, we do make things a little bit trickier. I've got a single subject, I, but I actually have 2 verbs. I have like and dislike, and it's glued together with a fanboy, but. But notice I don't repeat the subject. I only say the subject, I, once. And because I only have one subject, this is still a simple sentence, and I do not need a comma, okay? Typically, if you're going to use a fanboy, and, but, nor, I'm missing one, and, but, nor, or. So you would need a comma before it, but only if you have a second subject, which we don't have here. So this is still a simple sentence. Again, simple sentences do have their place in advanced writing. They're great when you're really trying to make one clear, strong point. So when you are giving your main claim, for instance, if you are giving your one clear so what at the end of a paper and you want to make sure that that sentence stands out, you can use a short, simple sentence to help make it stand out, especially if you've been using a lot of compound, complex sentences elsewhere in your paper. Compound sentences, we just started to get into a little bit here. A compound sentence is a sentence that contains 2 independent clauses, or 2 simple sentences, if you will. They could stand alone without actually being glued together by a comma. Okay, so 2 complete thoughts. And they're joined by a conjunction, one of the fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Okay, you have to have a comma here. So for example, I like Swiss cheese, comma, but James does not. There's our fanboy, but. Notice I've got 2 subjects, I and James, and I've got 2 verbs. The like and the does not is our combination here to repeat the like. Okay, so 2 subjects, 2 verbs equals compound sentence, especially when glued together by a comma fanboy. Another example, and notice we've actually got 3 here. This is more well, I don't want to say complex. This is a lengthier compound sentence. We have I like Swiss cheese. We have James likes American cheese. And we have our comma fanboy, Heather, our third subject here, likes pepper jack cheese. This is still a compound sentence because each one of these could be its own independent sentence. I could have I like Swiss cheese, period, James likes American cheese, period, Heather likes pepper jack cheese, period, and this would still convey the same meaning. Therefore, it is a compound sentence. Key here, though, remember, comma before the fanboy if you're going to have multiple subjects. All right, the final sentence type that we're going to talk about is the complex sentence. And you are more than likely playing with complex sentences already, but this is the area where I see the most errors as far as comma use. So do pay close attention to what I say about comma use. A complex sentence is an independent clause or a complete thought joined by one or more dependent clauses, marked by a subordinating conjunction. Now, this is just a fancy word of saying that we're giving it a condition, okay? And we're using prepositions to do that. If you haven't already watched L2A commas, you should definitely do that because I'll talk in more detail about prepositions and comma use with prepositions there, but the same rules would apply here. In most cases, if you are using a dependent clause, you're going to need to glue it on with a comma. The only exception would be if you're gluing those phrases on to the end of a sentence. Some of the prepositions don't require a comma. Some do, some don't. Two examples here. Because is our preposition. Because I enjoy cheese, comma, I make grilled cheese sandwiches often. Now, our main independent clause is I make grilled cheese sandwiches often. But again, we're giving this a condition. I'm explaining why I make them so often. And this is my conditional dependent clause, because I enjoy cheese. Because I enjoy cheese cannot stand alone. It has no reason to be here unless I'm adding it on to explain why I make them so often. Therefore, this is a complex sentence. Notice I do still have two subjects. The key difference here between the compound and the complex is the type of glue word we're using. Prepositions give conditions. They explain how and why things occur. Our second example is one of those no comma examples. Here's my subject, I make tomato soup. That's my main sentence, but I want to give it a condition. When I make grilled cheese sandwiches. So I'm giving a time condition. When you glue one phrase onto the end of a sentence, you do not need a comma. So we can just glue that right on. When I make grilled cheese sandwiches, my complex sentence helps give a condition and explain when I do something. Now we're going to take a look at some examples here, and we'll determine whether they are simple, compound, or complex sentences. Remember, the key here is to use them to good effect. You want a mix of all three sentence types in your writing to help keep your reader from getting bored. So I've given you a mix of all of them here. You could throw this into a paragraph telling a short story, but the big idea is it a mix? That will make it more engaging. So, our first sentence, I went home, comma, but James went to Meyer. Now, assuming this is punctuated correctly, we're going to want to pay close attention to how that comma is used. I'm going to notice that there's a comma, but, and a fanboy, and I see two subjects, I and James. Therefore, that tells me that this particular sentence, with its fanboy use, comma, and two subjects, is a compound sentence. Our second sentence, while at Meyer, comma, James purchased a cake. So I've got my comma I want to pay close attention to. There's no fanboy, so that immediately tells me I'm probably not dealing with a compound sentence here. While is one of those conditional prepositions. So it's actually giving me a time frame. When did James purchase the cake? While he was at Meyer. And that tells me that this is a complex. I've got my prepositional phrase, starting with while, glued on with my comma. The main part of the sentence is James purchased a cake. We have a complex sentence. Number 3, after James left Meyer, comma, he went to see Fred. So again, I'm going to pay close attention to that comma. I see the, again, time-related prepositional phrase after. Notice I do actually have two subjects here, but that's okay. We can have that with a complex sentence. The key is we're giving a condition. When did James go to see Fred? After he left Meyer. And so we have a complex, giving a condition. 4, although the cake was meant for Alice, comma, Fred ate it all. Again, I'm going to pay close attention to that comma. I see another conditional preposition here, although. We're giving some contrast here. The cake was meant for someone else, Alice, in fact. Fred ate it all. And I've got multiple subjects going on, but again, that's no big deal. With that prepositional phrase in the comma, I know this is complex. And then finally, number 5, Fred didn't even feel bad. No comma, one subject, one verb, feel, with a didn't, a negative to help surround it. But one subject, one verb, no commas. This is definitely simple. And it's placed pretty well. If we were to treat this as a paragraph or telling a little story, we're closing with our main jab here. Like, we're a little bit angry at Fred because he ate that cake. We want to ram home that he shouldn't have and that he was inappropriate. He didn't even feel bad about it. What a terrible person, Fred. How could you do that? So we end with a simple sentence to help make that clear after using compound and complex sentences to give the details of the story itself. Remember, when working with sentence structure, variety is what you want to do. Make sure that within your body paragraphs, within your introduction, your conclusion, each paragraph has a mix of simple, compound, and complex sentences to create more interest for your reader.